Welcome, friends. It's 9 p.m. and my kids are finally asleep. I'm getting ready to get in bed with a cup of my sleepy time tea and a dash of melatonin. I'm settling in for what I hope will be a long winter's nap. But before I can make that happen, I need to spend some time heading down that long, winding rabbit's hole known as 19 Kids and Counting, the story of the Duggar family.
Here we go again, back in 2016 where I ended my previous video with the canceling of 19 Kids and Counting. Here's how it all happened. On May 21st, 2015, In Touch Weekly published an article with the headline, Bombshell Duggar Police Report. Jim Bob Duggar didn't report son Josh's alleged sex offenses for more than 1 year. This launched a series of articles revealing more details of a scandal involving Josh Duggar and his behavior as a young teenager towards his own sisters and an unrelated babysitter. According to Fundamentalist Wiki, in March 2002, Jim Bob Duggar notified the Springdale Police Department that a female minor reported being touched during sleep by Jim Bob's 14-year-old son, Josh Duggar. The female minor reported that this happened on multiple occasions. Currently, there is much speculation who this minor may have been, possibly Jill Duggar, Josh's own sister. Jim Bob claimed Josh admitted to the offenses and was punished. In March of 2003, 9 months after the initial act of discipline, Josh was accused by additional minors of touching them while they were sleeping. Jim Bob met with the elders of his church and told them what was going on, but did not alert law enforcement. Reportedly, Josh was sent to a Christian program that required him to do hard physical work while receiving counseling. Police reports state that upon returning home, Josh apologized to the female minors and they had forgiven him. In the report, one of the interviewed victims says that Josh had sought after God and had returned back to God. Josh was also taken to talk to Joseph Hutchins, an Arkansas state trooper and friend of the family. Hutchins gave Josh a very stern talk, but despite being a mandated reporter, took no further action. Hutchins was later arrested and convicted of CP and is currently serving a 56-year prison sentence. A family friend who was aware of the situation reportedly wrote a letter about what he or she knew. The letter was placed in a book and forgotten about. The Duggars claim the letter was found when the book was loaned out shortly around the time of the police report. The Duggar family was scheduled to appear on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2006, but an unidentified 61-year-old female emailed the show's producers alerting them to the situation in the Duggar home. Harpo Studios turned the letter over to the Department of Human Services, which launched an investigation. The police asked to speak to Josh, but Jim Bob instead tried to hire a lawyer and refused to produce his son for questioning. By the time the police got involved, the statute of limitations in Arkansas had passed, preventing any further action. In reality, there are many pieces to this initial SM story as told by friends, church, and family members. To learn more about the specifics and get newly discovered information from behind the scenes, please click on and listen to my video entitled Down the Rabbit Hole with Josh Duggar. In this video, we look at the statements of people surrounding the Duggars at the time of this scandal for a more accurate view of what happened. Josh, who had been visiting his family in Arkansas when the report was published, was spotted in Washington, D.C.'s Reagan Airport on May 20th, 2015. At the time, he and his family lived in Oxon Hill, Maryland, where Josh worked for the Family Research Council as an executive director of the lobbying arm. Reportedly, Josh was quickly asked to step down from his role following news reports regarding the scandal. Swiftly, the Duggar family moved to put out statements. On May 21st, 2015, the following statements were published on the family's official Facebook page. from Jim Bob and Michelle. Back 12 years ago, our family went through one of the most difficult times of our lives. When Josh was a young teenager, he made some very bad mistakes, and we were shocked. We had tried to teach him right from wrong. That dark and difficult time caused us to seek God like never before. Even though we would never choose to go through something so terrible, each one of our family members drew closer to God. We pray that as people watch our lives, they see that we are not a perfect family. We have challenges and struggles every day. It is one of the reasons we treasure our faith so much, because God's kindness and goodness and forgiveness are extended to us, even though we are so undeserving. We hope somehow the story of our journey, the good times and the difficult times, cause you to see the kindness of God and learn that He can bring you through anything. From Josh. 12 years ago, as a young teenager, I acted inexcusably, for which I am extremely sorry and deeply regret. I hurt others, including my family and close friends. I confess this to my parents, who took several steps to help me address the situation. We spoke with the authorities, where I confessed my wrongdoings, and my parents arranged for me and those affected by my actions to receive counseling. I understood that if I continued down this wrong road, that I would end up ruining my life. I sought forgiveness from those I had wronged and asked Christ to forgive me and come into my life. I would do anything to go back to those teen years and take different actions. In my life today, I am so very thankful for God's grace, mercy, and redemption. From Anna. I can imagine the shock many of you are going through reading this. I remember feeling that same shock. It was not at the point of engagement or after we were married. It was 2 years before Josh asked me to marry him. When my family and I first visited the Duggar house, Josh shared his past teenage mistakes. I was surprised at his openness and humility, and at the same time didn't know why he was sharing it. For Josh, he wanted not just me but my parents to know who he really was, even every difficult past mistake. At that point, and over the next 2 years, Josh shared how the counseling he received changed his life as he continued to do what he was taught. And when you, our sweet fans, first met me, when Josh asked me to marry him, I was able to say yes, knowing who Josh really is. Someone who had gone down a wrong path and had humbled himself before God and those whom he had offended. Someone who had received the help needed to change the direction of his life and do what is right. I want to say thank you to those who took time over a decade ago to help Josh in a time of crisis. Your investment changed his life from going down the wrong path to doing what is right. If it weren't for your help, I would not be here as his wife, celebrating 6.5 years of marriage to a man who knows how to be a gentleman and treat a girl right. Thank you to all of you who tirelessly work with children in crisis. You are changing lives, and I am forever grateful for all of you. The Duggars also surprisingly agreed to do an infamous interview with Megyn Kelly regarding what happened when Josh was a kid. On the evening of June 3, 2015, Fox News aired an interview with Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar on their program, The Kelly Files. This was the first time the family had spoken about the SM since their initial statements days after the report was released. They both defended their son's behavior and said they were proud of him for admitting his sins. Looking back, we did the best we could under the circumstances. He was still a kid. He was still a juvenile. He wasn't an adult. This was not rape or anything like that. This was touching someone over their clothes, Jim Bob Duggar said. Jim Bob also used this interview to defend their choice to let the family be filmed for a reality TV show, saying, "When they asked us to do that reality TV show, all of this had been taken care of 5 years before, and we had a clean bill of health from the state." Viewers were quick to point out that 17 Kids and Counting began airing in 2008, which was 2, not 5 years since the investigation had taken place, and that 4 TLC specials had been released in 2006-2007, when the investigation had taken place. In the interview, the Duggars stated that they felt the show should not be canceled, as it wouldn't be fair to punish the rest of the family for one child's actions. At the end of the interview, a teaser aired for an interview that would be playing on Friday, revealing that two of Josh's sisters, 24-year-old Jill Dillard and 22-year-old Jessa Seawald, were naming themselves as victims. On June 5th, the Kelly Files aired the full interview with Jill and Jessa, who both defended their brother. Well, I think in the case of what Josh did, it was very wrong. I'm not going to justify anything that he did or say it was okay, not permissible, but I do want to speak up in his defense against people who are calling him a child emmer, or a P, or a R. Some people are saying. I'm like, that is so overboard, and a lie, really. I mean, people get mad at me for saying that, but I can say this because I was one of the victims. So I can speak out, and I can say this and set the record straight here. Like in Josh's case, he was a young boy in puberty, and a little too curious about girls, and that got him into some trouble, and he made some bad choices. But really, the extent of it was mild, inappropriate touching on fully clothed victims, most of it while girls were sleeping, said Jessa. The sisters claimed they were unaware they had been emmed until their father told them. I was shocked, like, okay, this is strange, Jessa stated. I don't know, I didn't understand this is what happened. They also spoke about the struggle to move on as a family. I was angry at first. I was like, how could this happen? And then, my parents explained to us what happened, and then Josh came and asked each of us individually. I know he asked me to forgive him, and I had to make that choice to forgive him, And it wasn't something that somebody forced, like, oh, you need to do this. It's like you have to make that decision for yourself. My dad explained to us, he said, there's a difference between forgiveness and trust. That's not the same thing. You forgive someone, and then you have boundaries, forgiveness with boundaries, and so trust comes later. Josh destroyed that trust at the beginning, and so he had to rebuild that, said Jill Dillard. The two also discussed safeguards the family implemented to ensure there were no future offenses, including not being alone, having locks on the bedroom doors to be used when sleeping, and wearing leggings or shorts under their skirts. Jill stated that the publication of the police report had made the situation even worse for them. I see it as a re-victimization that's 1,000 times worse. This was something that's already been dealt with. We've already forgiven Josh. We've already moved on, Jill said. When this happened, were you shocked by the scandals? How did you feel when the SM allegations were confirmed? My first thoughts went mainly to the victims, then to Anna, and lastly, I thought about Michelle. How did she feel when she realized her own son, her firstborn, was taking advantage of his own small sisters in their bedroom at night? Okay, and here's where I'm going to go ahead and put in a pretty big disclaimer. I want to make you aware that from here onward in this video, I will be using pictures of Josh Duggar when he was very young. I'm doing this because I feel it's important to visually see and remember that both Josh and his victims were children. And even Josh was once a young, innocent toddler at some point. I believe it's important to remember this because even though there is currently no evidence to support it, we would do well to remember a significant number of young offenders were once offended against, and we don't know what happened to Josh Duggar in his childhood. I'm using this platform right now to remind my audience that both Josh and his victims were very young children when he did these horrible things. For many, these revelations of SM charges against a young teenager might be shocking and unfathomable. But regarding my own experiences, I have a lengthy background in working with children who have been abused, mistreated, and victimized on every level. For a period of time, I worked within a child SM facility. This was a public facility funded by the government whose sole purpose is to house and treat children under the age of 18 who have been charged or convicted of S offenses. Many of these children offended against their siblings or other family members, and not so shockingly, many of them are also former victims of SA themselves. Before they ever offended, they were victimized. Working at this facility opened my eyes to many surprising realities. Everyone's situation was unique, and yet overall, it shocked me to find that many of the victims or families of these young perpetrators sought out interaction, counseling, and reconnection with the children at the facility. Per the Juvenile Law Center, approximately 200,000 people in 38 states are currently on the SO registry for crimes that they committed as children. This represents only the children who've been found guilty and placed on the SO registry. Some states do not even allow minors to be convicted. Many who are on the registry were convicted when they were as young as 8 years old. The label of S offender will last forever, regardless of when a child was placed on the registry. Many believe young people deserve second chances and the opportunity to be rehabilitated. Honestly, in this way, I believe we can possibly understand why Jim Bob and Michelle were quick to want to protect their 14-year-old from legal intervention. Young people who commit S offenses should be held accountable for their actions, but registries punish young people for years and even decades after they have been through the justice system. We all want accountability that is fair, and most of all, we want safety for past and potential victims. However, is it the case that we should take kids like Josh Duggar at 14, convict them of a serious crime, and limit their lifelong opportunities, leaving them labeled for life? No, come on, let's be honest. That's not what most people want. Most people simply question Jim Bob and Michelle's methods of getting treatment for Josh. I can say I saw some really hard and difficult environmental issues at the facility I worked in. Taking a young, impressionable youth offender and surrounding them with other similar offenders does not create any kind of harmony and sometimes works against the therapeutic environment you're trying to create. The Juvenile Justice Law Center reports, labeling kids as S offenders does not increase public safety because the recidivism rates for youth are below 3%. The stigma of this label and the severe restrictions registries place on youth make communities less safe by pushing the youth out of their schools, separating families, pushing kids into homelessness, making youth targets for vigilante violence, and increasing the risk of self-harm. You could say being labeled for life cuts youth off from a society and unfairly pushes them into the margins. So, let's be honest, Jim Bob and Michelle were faced with difficult choices about their son and the future of their family. Did they make the right ones? Later on in this series, we will do a deeper dive into how Jim Bob and Michelle's religious convictions and the structure of the IBLP probably overly influenced the choices they made regarding Josh's SM scandal. We will also look at how the teachings and realities within the IBLP may lend to creating the perfect environment for fostering inappropriate boundaries and behaviors among its community. More regarding all of that in part 3 of this video. But more importantly, I would love to hear from you regarding these topics. What are your opinions regarding the Josh Duggar SM scandal? What do you think about how Jim Bob and Michelle chose to handle Josh? I read all of your comments and reply back as much as possible. Tell me about your own experiences and what I've gotten right or wrong with my opinions in this video. I can't wait to read your comments below. Now I'm off to read some interesting articles, watch some new commentary, and head even further down the rabbit hole before I finally fall asleep. Good night, friends.